Hi guys, welcome back to Delivery Studios. We are still on the Android baking app where we use Retrofit, Exoplayer, displaying a heterogeneous recycler view, and using the master detail flow for larger screens like tablets. We've talked about how to consume the JSON, the baking JSON from the cloud, and we'll be looking deeply on data presentation. Firstly, in the first part, we've been able to display the recipes, that's the desserts, the Nutella pie, brownies, yellow cake, and cheesecake in a recycler view layout using the linear layout manager, which you could see right there from the emulator. On click of each of these item takes you down to a detail page where excuse me, where you're going to have the ingredients and the steps to actually prepare the particular dessert. So you have the ingredients laid out, listed above, while the steps is below in cards. So a click on each step takes you to a video tutorial. So this video is going to focus more on creating this look and feel, where you're going to be having the list of ingredients and the list of steps. You need to actually display that in a particular layout, which we're going to be using the heterogeneous flow. It's highly recommended to use a recycler view in a particular layout. Don't inflate two, three different recycler views in a particular layout. So you will actually use one, and you get to inflate the different view orders that the recycle view would depend on. That's the normal approach. So it's actually going to make the user experience top notch, and it's going to reduce lagging and reduce bugs in your code. So I'm actually going to be showing you this on how to achieve this in a Chiefy. We'll be starting right from the recipe adapter. This the adapter binding to the list of all recipes, which you saw earlier right in the emulator. A click on a particular item takes you to a detail page where you need to set up an intent, put an extra. You just need, based on the pass label implementation of the model, it's going to be very useful here. Just passing the baking process, which is an object of the baking process. So you pass that to an activity called recipe detail activity. We'll get to look at the activity now. This is the activity recipe detail that extends app compact. But before I cover this, I would like us to look at the layout. How are we going to create the different flow, the layout for a phone and the layout for a tablet, which will be implementing the master detail flow, as I've said earlier. We have an activity item list right there in the layout folder, activity item list. Let's get to see how that layout displays. It's basically a coordinator layout wrapper where you have the upper layout that houses the toolbar, which is the toolbar of an Android app, and you have a frame layout which encompasses the content areas. Also, you could also call the content areas. You could see it's a frame layout. Inside that frame layout, we're including on the fly a layout called the recipe detail. So you could see that right there. We'll get to look at the content of this recipe detail. You have the floating action button. You could decide to add this or not. Let's get to see what the recipe detail comprise. That's where you get to have two different layouts. You could see you have the recipe detail normal, while the recipe detail for a large screen of 900 dps above. That's 900 pixels above. You could see that. Firstly, let's see the portrait just for a normal phone screen, which you could see it's basically a recycler view with the width and height match parents. Margin left and margin right 16 dp, and the layout manager is linear. We've set it up already, linear layout manager. You could set up a staggered grid, so you don't really need to inflate. You could still, inflate if you feel like, but you don't really need to set up a linear layout manager object in the Java code anymore. A look at this, you could see the recycler view. Let's get to see the detail of the large screen. That's going to take a different flow. You could see that immediately you get a click on that, it shows you a kind of landscape mode, showing mimicking a tablet flow. We'll get to see how you're going to display that. A linear layout will be good as the parents tag. Inside the linear layout, you still need to maintain a recycler view, but this time the recycler view will be shifted down to the left side. That's the design flow of a master detail approach. You pull the list items at the left side, while the right side, the bigger chunk of the display, will take a frame layout where you have a container that would show the item click. Basically, it's always the item click from the list. You get to see the detail in the frame layout, as you could see right there. So that's just the normal flow, and we implore you to look at it one more time. So you have it set up this way. Now we have two recipe detail, one for the portrait screen, while the second is for the landscape of a tablet, not just the landscape of a mobile device, a tablet, a bigger screen. So that's just it. Let's get to continue on our implementation. Now we're going back to the detail, the recipe detail activity. You get to listen to the intent over here. We passed in an extra, which is a parseable extra, is an object of the baking process. That is the pojo, the parent pojo. Now you get to test if the intent that started this activity as an extra of recipe. If it does, you need to extract the values because we need that. You get parseable extra based on the key, which is the recipe, and you pass that to an object of the baking process. It's actually a list created over here, the baking process object rather of a baking process. From there, you get to extract the necessary lists. You get to extract the ingredients. You get to extract the step. That's what you're doing right here. You call the ingredients, get ingredients, pass that to the recipe ingredient list. The same thing goes for step, and you need to extract the recipe name. Get the name, pass that to the recipe name string value. Now, what you're going to do, we need to add all these two lists to form a particular list of objects. So you get to firstly set up the array list over here. That's the array list of objects called baking objects. You could see from there you need to add those two lists, the step list and the ingredient list, which you have right there, recipe step, recipe ingredients. You need to add all to the baking objects. Add all to the baking objects. So you're going to have two lists of objects in the baking objects, which you could reference to. We'll get to see how we're going to look at that later on. Set the title to the recipe name. That's the essence of the recipe name. So you'll be able to know which one you click. This is going to be applicable when you're trying to use the mobile device. You need to find the view by ID if you're actually seeing an ID of item detail container. So the detail container view will represent only in the large screen layout of values of 900 dp above. If this view is present, then the activity should be in two pane mode. So you need to check for that. If it's actually a mobile device, this is going to be null. So it's the two pane will be false. But if you're having a landscape of, let's say, a tablet, you're going to have the two pane mode to be true. At that point in time, it's going to trigger the two pane mode flow, which we are trying to emphasize. Initialize the recycler view. You set up the recycler view over here. That's a helper method right there that sets the fixed size, and check out the linear layout manager. That's just like what I've said. You may not need to add this since you've added the linear layout manager from the recycler view root. You instantiate the adapter. We are going to be using an inner class adapter called recipe and step adapter, which is for both. What you're going to pass in, you're going to pass in the baking objects and the two pane. So it's either going to be true or false. So we need that boolean, and now let's get to see what the adapter is going to look like. It extends the recycler view adapter, and the item to display the recycler view, you have the list of objects, as you can see, which is the data set, which is going to actually be initialized to the baking objects. You have the ingredient and the step with the index of 0 and 1, and the boolean of 2 pane. You're expecting that as well. In the constructor of the recipe and step adapter, you pass in the list of objects and the boolean 2 pane. So that's just the two collections. You have one collection and the boolean that you're actually expecting. So you initialize with what you've created locally here. So this will be usable from what you're getting from the calling class. Get the item view type based on its position. Now, if the dataset position is an instance of the ingredient class, you return the ingredient int, which is 0. If the dataset is an instance of the step, you return step. That's when you could know which instance object you are dealing with. Let's get to move further. In any view order, recycler view order, you need to create that. That's where you need to inflate the view orders. You could see where the view orders come to play. The ingredient view order and the step view order. Let's quickly look at that. They cover that. The view order, you have the layout view order for ingredients and view order for step. For ingredients, you only have the text view of the recipe ingredients. Cool. And for view order for step, you get to have the description. You could have the video URL if you like. You could have the short description. You could have an image if they are all applicable. But we're only making the short description visible since that's the only content we could extract from the view order. The URL of the video will be used when you're trying to display the video using Exoplayer. Back to the detail activity. Let's continue. So you have that. So now we're going to inflate the layout based on different views, the different view type. So if it's an ingredient, you're going to inflate the layout view order of ingredient. If it's step, and the default will be step. But basically, you're going to be having two of it since you're passing those two objects from the parseable click listener on each of the list item. On bind view order, after you've extracted that, you need to bind that to a view. All you're going to do is still need to test the view type. If it's ingredients, if it's step. If it's ingredients, you instantiate the ingredient view order. That means you're going to have a class of view order. The ingredient view order, you're going to have a separate view order that, and you're going to have another separate view order for step, and which you just call the configure. That is a method which you have underneath that passes the ingredient view order object and its position. The same thing goes for step, the step view order object and its position. Now let's look at the ingredient view order that takes the ingredient view order object and the position. You get to cast the ingredient to the data set, because now if you should look at it, the data set has two different lists, which is for ingredient and for step. Are you going to be able to separate the particular list you're looking at. So now you need to cast that to the ingredient. So in a nutshell, you're trying to tell the data set what I need you to return is the ingredient object. That's just it. That's the essence of this. And now from there you could extract the value, like extract the get ingredient value, and you set that to text. We'll get to look at the view order, the ingredient view order itself. The same thing you do for the step view order, you cast to the step object. Now let's get to look at the view order itself. You could get item count based on the data set size. Definitely it's going to be of two sizes, the step and the ingredients. Cool. Now let's have the view order for step. That's for step, and you're going to be having the view order also for ingredient. Let me start with the ingredient view order. I think that looks short. Extends RecyclerView order. This is where you get to inflate your text view. I hope you understand what view order is. That's the content itself. You have the constructor over here. You need to initialize the view. You could set a listener here, an on-click listener to each of the view order item. So you get the ingredients. We'll use that right there when we are binding values. That this only returns the ingredient value, and you could also set the ingredient that is going to actually change this value. That's just what that's doing. Let's get to look at the step view order. This way we actually have the three text views that we are looking at from the layout view order step. A constructor follows. You need to initialize those views, and now that's the juicy part. You set on click listener to the view where you're going to actually make this, work as the flow intent. The first flow is 2 pane. The second is when you're dealing with a mobile phone, just portrait, or let's say a mobile phone, a smaller screen. Now, if it's 2 pane, what are you going to do? You call the bundle because you need to add some extras to the arguments. You put parse label, the click data item, that's the object of step. That's just what we need. You could see how we've been able to cast step to data set, like separating the kind of data we needed, not ingredient, we need step. You instantiate the recipe step fragment that will be consuming all these values, all these parse label values. You set the fragment and you replace the item detail container with that value with the fragment itself. So it's just replacing fragments. That's what you're going to do. Else, if it's not in a 2 pane mode, you need to handle it just like a click to another activity. As a click on that launches another activity, basically. So you still need to cast to get the step objects, instantiate the intent, put extra. You don't put parse label yet, you just put extra. The click data item, and you start the activity. So we're going to be having two implementation here: recipe step activity, recipe step fragment. It's the same in a nutshell, but just in a different flow. Now, let me just try to let you understand how this is going to look like. A click on the recipe step activity, that's just activity. What's going to happen in that activity? The activity will only be replacing fragment, and it's going to be replacing to the recipe step fragment. That's just it. So from here in a 2 pane mode, the recipe step fragment is called immediately. No need to go through the activity. That's just it. So in the recipe step activity, you're still going to have the recipe step fragment replaced. So that's just the flow of 2 pane. But we'll get to look at that in the next tutorial, when we'll be looking at the Exoplayer, and when we'll be listening to the URL and displaying this the video, the steps of the tutorial to achieve that particular recipe or the particular dessert. So that's just the brush down on how to use the heterogeneous flow. You can see how simple, concise, accurate it could be. You could even use more than 5 lists, more than 6 recycler views, more than 6 implementation of view orders in a recycler view. In another video, which I'll be trying to brush down, we'll be looking at different complex layouts. When we'll be looking at 2 to 3 form of horizontal recycler view with a scroll list and different things happening on a layout. How are we going to achieve that complex layout? We'll get to look at that in detail. I'll make that a separate video, how to achieve complex layout using the recycler view in Android, and which is going to be following the recommended standard and won't be buggy in any form. So that's just the basic way to achieve this. You only need to lock in your recipe adapt your recipe detail activity in your manifest, which is the metadata of your application. You could see it right there. And what is it listening to? Is listening to the main activity as the parent uh, uh, value or the parent activity. You could see it right there, the main activity. So cool. With that, you have a pleasant flow of this nature. Can you see it again? You're going to have a pleasant flow of this. So that's just what gave rise to this. Catch me up in the next video where we're going to be talking about Exoplayer. Thank you very, very much for hanging out with me throughout this video. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Have